We are a little late, so I apologize for that. But nevertheless, consciousness, we're back. One of the things we have to do today is to try out our downloads. How do we do this? Last date, last. Oh, I see. Is this the one we downloaded yesterday? Yes, okay. Yeah, we have to try that out. We have to throw the survey of different consciousness theories. We got to throw that in with our own our most recent save, which would have been that one. I got to keep watch because I might be on call. Okay. No, I'm not on call today. Yeah, so the question would be, given all you know about the different frameworks of consciousness, how well does my script, my video script, argue its perspective? All right, we're gonna save that as a fun thing for later. Yo, Dharmadam, what's good? What's happening? A little late, but nevertheless, we made it here. We've got some more consciousness stuff to discuss. I've been working on the script. We are down to about here. We're like almost, yeah, we're like down to about here. So we're almost halfway done in terms of making things nice. And then we could start reading it on the stream and editing it further. I think some of this later stuff is pretty done. Yeah, like once we get to the ontological takeaways section, I think we're pretty good. And then I have to just make sure that we're not redundant about things. And we do have to work on this what's being researched, like outro type thing. That's the actual outro. Okay. I'm chilling, keen to co-work. Nice, studying this at the moment. Oh, what do we got here? Quintessential Zotian, or Zotian. Confusion dawns as wisdom. This hands-on guidebook adapts the Zotian path for the modern student while adhering to. This is pretty good, right? 4.46. I mean, I guess 6 reviews, but. Oh no, but 101 ratings. I think that's pretty good. To traditional principles. The book is based on the direct, accessible style of Tulku Uryan Rinpoche, and offers a thorough grounding in how to study, contemplate, and meditate in this rich spiritual environment, guided by an introductory teaching by Rinpoche, as well as 42 selected teachings from great Zotian masters. Readers learn to access the pure, clear awareness that lies hidden under the constant flow of anxious thoughts. Very nice. Sam Harris's teacher, nice. Was that's who Rinpoche is? My meditation teacher has been trying to lead me to more Zotian, so getting back into it. Oh, how do you get a meditation teacher? Is this something in person? Is this something where they come to you? Do you go to them? I'm intrigued. I didn't realize that meditation teachers were a thing. So is this an online thing? Nice. Oh, book a time with me. Nice. To book a time with me, you could also say, oh, nice, nice. I offer at least the following services: one-on-one, mid to long-term coaching in meditative practices and Dharma, which involves some therapeutic aspects, single appointments around particular questions in practice or theory, lessons in philosophy, Buddhist or otherwise, supervising solo retreats. A solo retreat can be a great idea if, okay. Can draft you a schedule to follow and meet with you several times during your retreat to supervise your practice. That's really cool. Solo retreats. Would it make sense to do a how weird would it be to do a retreat on this channel? Like, I mean, this isn't going to be anytime soon because I'm a mere student right now. But and I don't even have to be a teacher in the context of this retreat. But if we were to all follow something for like a weekend, and then like maybe a couple times during the weekend, I actually stream, and I don't know what we would do during that stream if we would just talk about stuff. But yeah, that might be interesting. We got to keep that in mind. Wow, this is really crazy. So this guy just does it for the love of the game. All my teaching is done on a pay-what-you-can basis. My livelihood depends on the donations I receive from teaching, so some form of fee is, generally speaking, required. The amount, though, is up to you. It should feel relatively easy to give, comfortable, not like a sacrifice. Something you want to give me, not something forced. It's a great practice in healthy generosity in its own right. What you essentially want to do here is to avoid the extremes of stinginess and unhappy self-sacrifice. This is the practice of genuine generosity. Donna. If, however, you are truly very poor and can't spare a single dime, just tell me and you won't have to give him anything. Your socioeconomic status should never form an obstacle to the training. Wow, that's kind of incredible. Wow, okay, we got upcoming retreats. Very interesting. He leads retreats. Found him online. Could be cool. Oh, yeah, he's a great guy. Nice. Very knowledgeable. That's really cool. Very cool. For a friend you are to me, you living, breathing, beautiful jewel of a being. I know you feel, I know you think, and that makes you a friend to me. May you be happy. What a great attitude. Philosophically, my views on life, reality, the mind, and on the foundations of a good, happy life could principally be defined as Buddhist, Platonist, Jungian in character. These three strands of thought form the core essence of how I see the world and humanity's place in it. They are informed both by what I like, or what I find likely or most coherent, based not only on my scientific and philosophical training, but also on my deep involvement with my own psyche and mystical states of consciousness, and also by what I find useful or the most beautiful. For views are tools, and seeing the ultimate emptiness of all views, and seeing the ultimate emptiness of all views, these tools can be flexibly utilized not only in the ever elusive task of finding the factual truth about reality, but also to promote a way of relating to that reality that makes for the most beautiful, happy, and harmonious existence possible, not only for oneself, but for all beings. It's kind of a thesis of the document. For they are only views, never reality itself. Right. As part of my academic work, I have written concise analytical exploration of panpsychism as a contemporary theory of consciousness. My most recent academic work concerns contemporary formulations of idealist metaphysics, that is, views under which mind or mentality is seen as the most fundamental ground of reality. Am I interested in getting guidance? Yeah, I was like, oh, panpsychism. What's good on your helmet? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if I'm interested in guidance at this point. I feel like I should part of me wants to like go in raw this time, because I've now like gone in. I think in the past I've gone in with guided meditation and I've gone in raw, and yeah, I kind of like the journey of going in raw, if that makes any sense. I need input on a philosophical topic. Is this like a super serious philosophical topic, or is this a just serious philosophical topic? Okay. It is very cool, though. Perhaps in the future I will ask again about that guy. How's this been so far? And like how, I guess, how open are you to this specific practice? If morals are subjective, why not just be indifferent to all ethics? Because just because meaning and morals are subjective, that doesn't mean that you won't be punished by your own psyche when you don't follow the rules. So when you do something that you quote unquote deep down know is wrong, whatever that means, like we really judge it based on the outcome rather than what actually causes it. Your mind's going to make you aware that you've done something wrong, right? This is crime and punishment. So we kind of retrospectively say that it was wrong because your mind is punishing you. Well, that's the thing. Why should you care about why should someone care about their psyche? Why should you care about feeling guilt? Why should you care about feeling social scrutiny when you do something that other people don't think is right? Like, that's a good question, right? You might as well say moral is objective at that point. Yeah, it depends what you mean by objective, right? Because, I always hold that the meaning we experience it's a subjective experience of an objective reality. Like, it feels objective to you. So those morals are objective in your mind, but they're subjective. Like the point I get out of subjective is that it doesn't necessarily need to be the same for each person. And it's not the same for each person. But we arrive at pragmatically similar understandings and pragmatically similar morals just over time. And then there's the whole, Jordan Peterson route where we could say that humans arrive at similar morals because there's something innately human about the morals that we arrive at. Like across cultures, we will always arrive at like morals that have noticeable similarities. Like these are fundamental to our DNA. It's kind of technical. Will take a while to ponder. Okay, nice. But Santu should help me. But I do like the framing they have. Nice. to me sounds like the two truths again. Ultimate subjective, but true in a sense. Ultimately subjective. Right. It's true, and like it feels true, right? Like this is going to be something that your mind's going to tell. It's going to scream at you. This is why a conscience is a really nice concept to hold in our mind and in our culture, because now we could think about something that's not us, right? Because we don't think we are the conscience, because we don't think that we intentionally make the sounds that the conscience makes. So now we can think of the conscience as some extra thing. Granted, a conscience is just perhaps the conscience is literally the default mode network, and yeah, it is really helpful to listen to that thing though. I think moral subjectivism shouldn't be taught to laymen nor to most philosophers. Is that what I've been describing is moral subjectivism? It's a different I don't know
Specifically with the issue of
I don't know if we were allowed to call it just moral subjectivism, even though it are based on individual attitude, because this is slightly wrong. It's not based on your attitudes and feelings, or individual attitudes. The attitudes is ambiguous in philosophy, where I think colloquially we think attitudes are opinions, are like intentional opinions. Like this is something I cognizantly self-identify as. Now for someone like Brandom, attitudes are pragmatic. Like they play themselves out. Like you don't have to be cognizant of your attitudes as you act them out, right? This is like just the inferences we make, the moves we make in our socials encounters, how we communicate, etc. All of these are things that we a lot of which we aren't aware of. It's unconscious to us. But feelings here, it is based on our feelings, but once again, colloquially, people think that feelings are like something more intentional than what I'm trying to get at when I say feelings. And then beliefs, it depends what we mean by beliefs again, because what are beliefs at the end of the day? Given that the structures that actually affect our experience of meaning over time are constantly changing. That's like one of the main things that the document points out. So when we're talking about understanding, it's really theoretical when we're talking about understanding. A conceptual understanding, like that's just it's a theoretical conceptualization of what's actually going on, which is just, different underlying mechanisms for memory, context, affect, etc. So yeah, if we're going to teach a moral subjectivism, it's got to be a very like nuanced, we shouldn't even call it that. We should call it, perhaps we shouldn't call it anything, because once you put a label on it, then now people start insinuating things that you're not intending, that we're not intending them to insinuate. Conventionally true, but I do believe if you act with indifference, you harm yourself, if that's a reason to care. Yeah, this is like, we could take even the homeostatic route here. When you make it so that your own mechanisms are like, you're disregarding your own internal mechanisms that are telling you when you ought to be doing something, like, yeah, like perhaps that I would need to see like the literature on that, but perhaps it does hurt you in the long term or the short term. But instead, we could play with it. Like this is the whole point of the document. We can take note of the constraints, and then we could consider how we would like to deliberately act within those constraints. And perhaps we would deliberately like to try to do something that changes those constraints. Like perhaps you don't feel like your conscience yells enough when you do something that you think is wrong. So how do you get to the point where your conscience yells more when you get to that, when you do those things? And then similarly, maybe your conscience yells too much. Like this is kind of a concept with meditation. Like, the idea is you want to not be judgmental. So your conscience or your default mode network might be yelling things at you, telling you that, you're doing something wrong. But for that practice, it's all right. Let's just notice that and let's chill. Moral subjectivism leads to moral nihilism, which ultimately leads to indifference. For example, why should a person care if they steal and go to prison? Because it'll make them suffer? Because it'll make others suffer? Why should they care? Since the reign of Christianity ended, the entire project of Western philosophy has been trying to address this question. Why should the rich man care about the poor? Moral subjectivists can't answer these questions. Right. That's what, we're not, that's like, this is why it's helpful that we say that we're not moral subjectivists, because I think we can answer these questions. It might take us some time to, though. So I don't know how deep we want to go into this, but I should just open up with, or like all the stuff that we talk about in the document, like the stuff that I, keep saying on this channel. It's not like arbitrary, and it's not like I think it sounds good, or I think it like vibes, and is like the whole point is I feel like we have to take this path, following the rules of science and logic. Like I try to make this case in this next video. It's like we are, what's the word? We are contingent? No. We've grounded ourselves in standards of science and logic. So wherever that takes us, we kind of have to go. So, regardless of whether things like sound good or not. Now the question is, like, pragmatically, should we teach this stuff if it perhaps has negative externalities like moral nihilism? And I don't think so, because we're going to teach it in a way where there's no necessary moral nihilism. I think we tell the whole story that explains why our morals developed in this way, why we're in part 3, we're going to have to talk about how our morals might be transcendent in a human way. Okay. The problem is that when the masses are not Christians in ethics, I'm not referring to theology. Most people still have a Christian conception of ethics, as in when they do not have Platonism for the masses. You are left with nothing for the common people. Philosophers themselves, such as Kant, Kierkegaard, and the rest, have tried to address this. It's why I prefer Kantian or Kierkegaardian ethics compared to Nietzsche's. The question, why should you care, is only answerable to someone who believes in certain values. Right. But yeah, I think the point is that everyone finds themselves with presuppositions about values. Like, I think that's just kind of, you learn value. Like, socialization requires learning values. So, you learn them from your parents or from other kids, rules about fairness, etc. And hopefully if you socialize with, decent kids or decent parents, like they put some good morals onto you. And yeah, right now those morals might be heavily Christian based or influenced. But that's the point of culture. We don't want to throw away the Christian morals with a more scientific view, and that's kind of one of the things that we should always yell on this channel when people ask the same questions you're asking. Not only because we'll suffer, but because other people suffer, and perhaps, you know, we could just make it into, like, in part 3, even though we're not allowed to like get into a clear moral framework, I think maybe the epilogue might be something like me making the point of why we ought to have a morality that's based in empathy. Like, and we derive that from our own understanding of our own experience, and the fact that because our experience is something that's affected by our biology, and we know that other people have that same biology, then now you can get to things like the golden rule or the platinum rule, etc. Just you know, very simply. But we're still like making a argument there. Like, it's not like we're making we're making more of like we're offering what we think is a compelling argument. It's not like we're, you know, logically deriving anything from anything. We're just kind of, you know, we're kind of asking people like, please do this, rather than saying that the science tells them they should do this. Yo, Energy Doctor, welcome back. Hello, hello, hello. We're on consciousness, all things consciousness. Yeah, if it's consciousness related, go for it. Onion Helmet, I don't know if my response was at all satisfying, because you know, these things you brought up are things that we should be very highly concerned about. Like, the account that I think that's this, so like following what I just said, the account that I think that our science points us towards is one that's quite controversial, because it is, you know, fundamentally, it's fundamentally idealist in some sense, which demolishes, you know, what people think of some sort of external truth. And that's pretty terrifying, and that, you know, that does apply to morals too, so that's also terrifying. So we have to be able to, we need to keep the part how our brain works and operates. This is why this is why our conceptualization of a conceptual understanding is really helpful, because then we could tie that in with all the experiences we know we have. I am satisfied. It's the problem of Western philosophy. No other problem is as important as it. Yeah. I mean, the ramifications are quite large if we do it wrong. What is the William James and Carl Lang theory regarding the origins of emotions? Maybe that's relevant. We'll see. I'm a little concerned though. If we're in 1880, then we're probably way far. Like, this is probably not going to be relevant, or it's probably not going to help us too much. Argues that emotions result from our perception of bodily changes that occur in response to stimuli. In other words, we don't cry because we're sad. We feel sad because we cry. This is pretty good. Like, this is pretty close to what it ended up actually being, but we don't actually have to notice the bodily changes. Like, the whole point of what Damasio is saying, I've got it right here. Where did I put this? Isn't it like right here? Oh yeah, okay. The feeling of the body arises only once the signals of physiology are mapped. This was the distinction we made between emotions and feelings. Emotions are the organism's physiological responses, changes in heart rate, blood pressure, hormonal release, whereas feelings are the brain's mapped representations of those bodily changes. So the difference is that we don't actually have to perceive the physiological changes, the bodily changes, you could say, for us to then feel those emotions. I think this is just kind of pointing out that, we notice that we cry and therefore we feel sad. Now, they probably picked up on something that's really apt here, but it wouldn't be because chances are it's not because we cry. It's because there's a lot of other underlying physiology that's making us sad, and as well as neural activity that they just didn't know about at this time. Oh, but okay, your body reacts automatically. Oh, never mind. They got this. I gotta stop doing this. I just kind of take the first thing and then I infer something. But they were actually right on. The process of emotion follows this sequence. Event occurs. You encounter a stimulus. Your body reacts automatically. You perceive these. Okay, maybe I was right. You perceive these physiological changes and interpret them. No, that's not what happens. Yeah, never mind. I've doubted myself, and then I've corrected that doubt. Later developments. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it's relevant, but it doesn't align with our more apt frameworks today. Exactly, I should say. All right, should we watch one of these videos?
I get the.
All right, let's start here.
What makes beings like us be conscious is more, I do regard it as a question of physics in a sense, because my view is that it depends upon something in physics which we do not understand as yet. I mean, the way around I look at it is that the universe is there, and in certain small parts of the universe, probably rather rare, things arrive, which we call beings and which we call conscious beings, in which the material of the universe is put together in such a way that a feature of the universe which is potentially there is somehow realized, but normally not. So I'm more on the side of saying matter is primary, but I don't like to put it that way because matter.
So yeah, the tricky thing is, like he said, a feature of the universe arises, and that's like a very odd. That's an odd take to say. It's like before, like the Big Bang happened, or let's just say, yeah, not before the Big Bang. The Big Bang happens, right? And we don't have molecules yet. Would you say that molecules are a feature of the universe in that first split second? And like in an Alan Watts sense, yeah, like they're a feature of the universe. The Earth is a feature of the universe because it eventually happens. I think that's probably not an appropriate thing to say. Like, I think features of the universe, as we talk about physics, should be something that exists currently in the universe. So prior to consciousness arising in these pockets of the universe, I don't think they're features of the universe yet. I don't think things that could possibly be made in the universe, or probably will be made, are necessarily features in the universe yet. I have read Crime and Punishment. Yeah. That's one of the few classics I have read. And I was astounded by how interesting the narrative could be about a topic that was so uninteresting. Like it was like, that's how I knew it was like well written. It addresses the exact question I've been talking about with Raskolnikov. Yeah. I did. I think I just mentioned it earlier. Of course, Dostoevsky was a Christian. Dun dun dun. Yep. Yeah, I mean, like if I were to do something terrible like that, would my brain just like absolutely destroy me? I don't know. I don't want to find out. We know that you can get to a point, right, where you don't care. That was the whole point of that Ordinary Men book about the Nazis being just ordinary men the few years prior to when they did those atrocities. Did I read it in Russian? I did not read it in Russian. I don't remember which translation I read it in, but I wish I knew a singular other language.
In a certain sense, is not the whole of the way physics is described. You have, I mean, is light matter. You don't call light matter normally. Our photons matter. I mean, massive particles tend to be referred to as matter. And are they more important primarily than things like gravitational waves or something? I mean, it's not very clear. The notion of matter is not very well defined in that sense, but it's better defined than conscious experience, because we don't really know that much about that. We have it, but somehow what makes it, what makes being...
I don't know. I think that a lot of these scientists just kind of checked out. This is 5 months ago. Was this filmed 5 months ago? Like, we have really cool science about consciousness in the past 5 years, maybe more, in the past 10 years. Yeah. In the last 10 years, there's been a lot of science that really points to how we can solve this problem.
Like us, be conscious, is more, I do regard it as a question of physics in a sense, because my view is that it depends upon something in physics which we do not understand as yet. We do understand the problem, that is to say, it's not something, with no connection with the way the physical world operates. In my view, and I'm giving a very specific view of my own here, that current physics has a huge gap in it. And the huge gap, see, people often say, well, quantum mechanics is the best theory we ever had, and they hesitate to mention that it's actually not such a good theory because it's self-inconsistent. When I say self-inconsistent, I mean, well, say the primary equation of quantum mechanics can be phrased as being the Schrödinger equation. And the Schrödinger equation tells you you've got the state of the system, then the equation tells you how that state evolves in time. The only trouble is it doesn't. It evolves in time for a while until it does what's called, somebody makes a measurement. What does that mean? Well, they realize...
So, once again, the way he's describing quantum physics is through the most common, popular interpretation. But the many worlds interpretation does solve this very problem that he's talking about. What did the ancient Greeks believe about consciousness? That's a good question. I mean, it was probably mythological. What did the ancient Greeks believe about consciousness? Developed several distinct and sometimes conflicting views depending on the period and philosophical school. There's no single word that exactly meant the modern term consciousness, but they explored closely related ideas such as psyche, nous, and phronesis, practical reasoning, intellect, mind. Okay. Psyche as life and awareness. Heraclitus described a deep, ever-changing psyche. You could not find the limits of the soul even if you traveled every road. Man, that is just incredibly wise for maybe that time. I don't know. Perhaps, this isn't too long ago technically, but suggesting an awareness that was boundless and connected to the cosmos. Saw mind as a cosmic principle that organized matter. All right. Heraclitus is very wise. He has some banger quotes. Nice. Should we do a Heraclitus week? Aristotle, the hierarchy of souls. Aristotle rejected Plato's dualism and grounded consciousness in biological life. He proposed the soul is the form of a living body, its organizing principle. What is going on here? Aristotle is popping off. Different beings have different soul capacities. What? This is crazy. I mean, granted, he's creating categories, which you guys know I don't like. Like, why is the plants nutritive and animals sensitive? It's all intuition. It's all vibes. But he is right about this, so that's kind of crazy. I have a recommendation about consciousness, which I believe might be more relevant. Let it rip. Based Aristotle solves philosophy in BC. Gone right. Absolutely. Eric Neumann outlined in the okay, what is the theory? All right. Major work of Jungian philosophy, psychology, that develops a psychological and mythological theory of the evolution of human consciousness. Okay. Neumann, a student of Carl Jung, proposed a developmental and archetypal framework that describes how consciousness emerges from the unconscious, both in individual human development and in the evolution of culture and myth. Interesting. Central idea of the evolution of consciousness. What time is this? This is 1949. You see, this is going to be too old too. Like, the way I see science and philosophy is not that because Eric Neumann's old, therefore this isn't profound or apt or anything. It's just that the people afterwards took this and then made it better, or made it, made it more apt with what we know. So, chances are Eric Neumann influenced the people that we ought to read, but we don't need to read Eric Neumann because this came out so long ago. But the central idea, the evolution of consciousness, that human consciousness evolved out of an original, undifferentiated, unconscious state, similar to how a child's ego emerges from the unconscious in early psychological development, happening within the individual and happening in the species as a whole. Okay. He interprets mythology as the symbolic record of this evolution. All right, so this is like a little, I don't know, maybe inappropriate to connect the two. But yeah, Damasio's done this now, and like Damasio's done this part. And certainly we've got people like Jordan Peterson talking about this part. And Jung. Yeah, here we go. The hero myth. Yep. So yeah, this is getting on to more of the I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Peterson's read this and talks about it. That's probably where he got it from. Is this a significant influence of Jordan Peterson? Yes, is a significant, though indirect, influence on Jordan Peterson's thought, especially as expressed in Maps of Meaning and his later lectures and writings. Peterson has explicitly cited Neumann several times, and many of his key psychological and mythological ideas are deeply indebted to Neumann's, or is it Neumann or Newman's? I'm guessing Neumann's, but I don't know. Synthesis of Jungian depth, psychology, and mythological analysis. And he explicitly references it in the book. Yep. One of Jung's most brilliant students to interpret myths as psychological blueprints for the development of the individual and culture. Right. He borrows Jung as refracted through Neumann, who's so this is like the analogy. Peterson's like me, Neumann's like Brandom, and Jung is like Hegel. Like I'm pulling from Hegel, but I'm doing it through as refracted through Brandom, who systematized Jung's archetypal theory into a historical and developmental framework, and Brandom systematized Hegel's phenomenology through a theory of mind that is rather, contemporary. He's literally me. I just want to be Jordan Peterson. That's it. All right, I think we're gonna call it then for this path. I think we're all. I think I've probably had my fill of Jordan Peterson for one lifetime. No, that's not true. We're gonna get back to MAPS meeting eventually, but here we go.
Out of the cupboard some machine which makes a measurement. Well, that machine is made out of the same material as everything else. We
got to go back.
The Schrodinger equation tells you you've got the state of the system. Then the equation tells you how that state evolves in time. The only trouble is it doesn't. It evolves in time for a while until it does what's called somebody makes a measurement. What is that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, under the many worlds interpretation, the world is still deterministic, but it involves splits of the universe where there's now two worlds when an electron, I don't know, is it apt to say it splits? I think that's the case, or yeah, like a wave function of an electron describes the probability that it becomes spin up or spin down after one of these splits, and so following the many worlds theory, things do just progress deterministically forward while worlds just keep popping off.
What does that mean? Well, they wheel out of the cupboard some machine which makes a measurement.
So the reason why I'm pro many worlds is because it solves that problem, and I think that's a more necessary problem to solve than the problem of there being many worlds, which perhaps that's not an apt way to go, but yeah, I think it's apt.
Well, that machine is made out of the same material as everything else, and so why doesn't that evolve according to the Schrodinger equation? I mean, Schrodinger clearly understood this because of his cat. I mean, people say, oh, well, we could make a Schrodinger's cat if we were clever enough and so on. That wasn't the point of Schrodinger's talking about his cat. The point he was talking about was, look, my equation, when I say mine, I mean Schrodinger's equation, he was saying, in a sense, my equation doesn't describe the way the world behaves. If you had a cat and tried to do this experiment, you get to this absurdity, namely a cat which is dead and alive at the same time. Well, a load of nonsense. A cat wouldn't be dead and alive at the same time. Something goes on in physical world which isn't in accordance with the Schrodinger equation. So he was very clear on that point, although people often misunderstand him, I think. I thought he was very clear on that point. And he and Einstein and even Dirac, rather surprisingly, were of the view that quantum theory needs some attention, that it's not, well, they say it's not a complete theory. I'd say it's even worse than that in a sense, that it's not even a self-consistent theory, because the theory says the system should evolve unitarily, in other words, according to the Schrodinger equation. But the world doesn't behave that way. It suddenly turns itself into probabilities and things. It's not that state, it's the probability of different states. And how on earth does it do that? The Schrodinger equation doesn't do that, as Schrodinger well knew. So there's another part of the theory, which is referred to sometimes as the collapse of the wave function, or whatever you say. It means that the quantum state does not describe the way the world behaves.
All right, we didn't get too much out of that one, but all right. Did he just roast Schrodinger? No, I think he actually defended Schrodinger. Like, I think he said that perhaps other people roasted Schrodinger, but unless, I don't know if did he say that Schrodinger explicitly felt like his theory was like complete? I was like, I'm supposed to be shocked, but I'm more confused. Oh, did you watch the video, or I just need to know what's going on in the contemporary space. We have to make waves in this space, so I need to know what waves we should be making. I didn't watch it. What can he possibly say? Fair enough. I don't want to watch it. All right, this is the quantum information panpsychism.
Conscious experience of what the drone is seeing. That conscious experience. Imagine that you control a drone. The drone looks at that reality where it is, sends me information, and I get the conscious experience of what the drone is seeing. That conscious experience is not in my body.
Oh my gosh. Is he doing spooky action at a distance?
It's in my consciousness.
A scientific theory that basically states that our body is operated like a drone from a conscious quantum field, which would mean that experience, qualia, is not in your head.
The qualia do not exist in the body, they exist in the field.
All right, we gotta bounce. We gotta get out of this one fast. Oh my gosh. All right. It's got to be clickbait. I also keep seeing Kastrup everywhere. Oh, he's on a marketing push. He's playing the game. He's doing well. I can't cast shade on the grind. Oh, what is this? Introducing Mind at Large project. A new paradigm. What is happening here? Why haven't we checked on this? All right, what's going on here? Addresses consciousness and the mind-body problem.
Consciousness is
24K. This is good stuff. This is mind-body solution. Oh, okay. So, and 3 more. So that's it. Okay. Here we go.
specifically with the issue of consciousness. So I've been pretty careful up until now to say very little about consciousness per se, right? I mostly talk about very, very functional, publicly observable behavior. So
Should we be more careful? Should I not start out with just consciousness videos? I thought that consciousness as a topic to be comprehensive about and then like close the discussion there. I thought for this video it would be a nice rite of passage. I don't know if I'm going to say this, but admittedly, I'm now burnt out on consciousness. As I mentioned, it isn't necessary that we solve these problems in order to pursue this channel's ultimate aims. That said, perhaps it was necessary to build the argument for why that is the case, since I expect many people to identify and contend with this channel's metaphysical presuppositions. Oh, this is terrible. I can't say to identify and contend with. And challenge. Yep. Because I don't want to say identify with, I want to say just identify. So since I expect many people to identify and challenge this channel's metaphysical presuppositions of a physicalist world, I don't think that's actually of a metaphysical physicalist presuppositions, especially since we do so through a conceptual idealist lens. Regardless, I feel like this was an apt rite of passage for this channel, given that consciousness is so fundamental. We will make sure to cover more practical topics in the future. Stay tuned. And then, yeah, then we bounce. Make a Sam Harris's wife taught me about consciousness. Sam Harris's wife was the reason that we did this whole thing. She put us on to panpsychism. That's what led to us discussing it on this platform, streaming. And then that was the only reason I was primed when I heard Alex O'Connor bring it up. We were already ready, so that's why I was like, oh, we have to do this now. Perhaps I would have still done that because I was reading the Damasio book regardless. People on LinkedIn really be like what Sam Harris's wife taught me about B2B sales. What is going on with that? I can't get in here. Oh, I can get in here. Okay. Helps my... What is it? What is B2B? Why does this look like it was written by a language model? Ah, but there's not enough M dashes. So maybe it wasn't. I'll turn most things into a LinkedIn post, but your engagement? It is my 15th wedding anniversary this weekend, and here's what I've learned. Don't treat your partner as a product. They don't like the constant suggested changes based on user feedback. Jesus, what is happening here? This is 1 year ago. Nice. Crazy stuff. Back business to business. Oh, I've never heard that before. What did I think of the record? Oh man, did you just leave a recommendation and run? Yeah, we went down a whole thing on that. We identified that Jordan Peterson was highly influenced by that guy, and then we also identified that the stuff that he talks about in terms of evolution in consciousness, Damasio's covered more aptly since. And for the other stuff, we've pulled from Jordan Peterson. So, yeah. Nothing much more to do. All right, here we go.
Intelligent behavior as problem solving, and these cognitive capacities that are kind of like experimentally observable third person kind of science. And so that was on purpose, not but not because it's not that I don't think consciousness is an important problem. I think it's an extremely important problem. I don't think it doesn't exist. I don't think that the mind body kind of issues are not important. They are, but I do think it's important to make as much progress as we can on quote unquote easy problems without immediately combining them with extremely difficult problems, right? And so once you start talking about consciousness, things get off the rails very quickly. And so I've wanted to, for most of my stuff, which up until now has not really needed to talk about consciousness per se, I wanted to kind of let that stuff cook in its own area that doesn't get into all of those issues about consciousness. But I do think it's an important problem. I am writing some stuff about it, and I guess the only thing I'll say about it now is that typically, when people talk about consciousness, they typically, not everybody, but often people think about the sort of input side of things, meaning the standard definition is, what does it feel like to be a whatever, a bat or a human robot or whatever, what's it like to be. So they focus on the experience, which is the kind of sensory side, if you will. And what I think is probably more, I mean, they're both important, but the thing that needs more emphasis is the actuation side. It's the action side. What is it like to be an agent that has the ability to do things? And the reason I think this isn't getting any attention is this: there is a theory of mind called epiphenomenalism, and in epiphenomenalism you sort of assume that, okay, you can say that yes, these conscious sensory states that I have are real, but they don't do anything. So the input side is real, but there is no output side. It's a view. I'm not saying I support it, but it's a view. What doesn't exist, to my knowledge, is the opposite side. I've never heard anybody have a view that says, well, the action part is real, the free will is real, but the sensory stuff is an illusion, right? I've never heard of that view. So the fact that there's only one, it's not symmetrical.
Maybe I'm going crazy. Isn't that Damasio's framework? Isn't that a lot of these frameworks? Like, I just made that whole video about the fact that consciousness is affecting downstream mechanisms, including behavior. I don't understand. And it's not just Damasio that has that view. I feel like I've hit multiple I don't know. I don't know what's going on anymore. I gotta get off of consciousness. Do you believe the theory by Terence McKenna on the relationship between consciousness and psychedelics is practical enough to be relevant for the document? Probably not for the document. I should say certainly not for the document. For the, I don't know if you saw the first video, Energy Daunter, but I do specifically touch on psychedelics and consciousness, and we do so again here. The strongest evidence for panpsychism interpretations of interpretations of consciousness is actually empirical, in the sense that there is widespread cross-cultural reporting of profound, expansive, and spiritual experiences. However, as we discussed in the previous video, we have discovered strong neural correlates for these exact experiences. These neural correlates, particularly involving alterations in the default mode network and global brain connectivity, explain why these experiences feel emotional, overwhelming, and open, and thus why people would report similar experiences. For example, when the DMN, which usually acts as a self-regulating filter, loosens its grip, information begins to flow more freely, sensory and emotional signals surge upward, and brain regions that rarely communicate start interacting, which results in intuitive, vivid, and novel experiences. To be clear, these mechanisms are not fully understood. The point is that we can see clear correlates between subjective experience and neural mechanisms. And once again, this does not solve the hard problem gap of consciousness. But we will get there. Should I say shortly, just so that we don't allow people to infer that we mean just in general, we mean in the video. Yeah, so the long version is reduced coherence within the default mode network, which ordinarily acts as a kind of top-down regulator, loosens the brain's usual constraints on information flow. As this filter relaxes, bottom-up sensory and emotional signals surge forward, engaging neuromodulatory systems that heighten cortical excitability and plasticity. The result is increased crosstalk between networks that typically remain segregated, giving rise to vivid, emotionally charged, and novel forms of experience. In this fluid state, learning may occur as a result. Regions that fire together during the experience begin to wire together, embedding new associations long after the state itself subsides. This is why psychedelics are an effective therapeutic treatment. You know, people have like ketamine therapy, and I think ketamine's a psychedelic. I could be wrong about that. But, you know, similar things with mushrooms of different kinds. The goal being, if it's a positive experience and it's directed in a certain direction, then you can actually affect change during the experience that does linger on afterwards. It's like a cheat code for building connections in the brain. So yeah, I don't know if does Terence McKenna have like a different view that like I would doubt it. Chances are I imagine Terence McKenna's view is vibes similarly. The particularly interesting point we made is that our experience of the world, our self, and even what is happening in consciousness is affected by our conceptual understanding, which we can think of as an amalgamation of our memory, context, culture, past, etc. In this framing, our understanding predisposes us to experience the world in certain ways. Since, as we highlighted, our experience of meaning comes with an affective feeling of certainty, it feels as though what is in our conscious awareness is objectively true, even though we all know that many of our thoughts turn out to be incorrect. I like to say that we each have a subjective experience of an objective world, a world that feels objective, yet isn't a representation of some transcendent absolute truth. I will do a whole video on this soon, so subscribe if you're interested. This is a crucial point. No matter what our experience feels like, we cannot discount how much that feeling is shaped by our brain's learned model of what consciousness is and what it should feel like. No matter what we think, what we explicitly think our experience feels like, because, you know, I want to say, or I want to make it clear that once you put it into words, you've reduced what consciousness is in some sense. So once we put it into words, now we're already speculating. This is why we can't have a theory of consciousness that is founded on intuitive metaphysical premises. So we can draw a crucial logical conclusion that will prime the entire spirit of this video. No matter what our experience feels like, we cannot discount how much that feeling is shaped by our brain's learned understanding of what consciousness could possibly be. This is another one where we should say, oh, this is, you know what, I've said this twice now, so I probably should clear one of these. Which one was I supposed to clear? I feel like I maybe moved one and then got rid of it. Yeah. So I probably should, yeah, I should probably get rid of that one. Which one? We cannot discount how much. Yeah, this is literally the same thing. Learn model of what consciousness what do we like here? Is and what it should feel like or could possibly be. I think we should go with this one. Because neuroscience provides a plausible mechanistic explanation for the brain states that correlate with these experiences of certainty, meaning, spirit, and spirituality, we have a physicalist account for why these experiences arise. Therefore, we cannot accept alternative non-physicalist theories that begin with the content of those subjective intuitions as a foundational metaphysical premise. That's a crazy sentence. The content of the intuition is precisely what needs to be explained. Thus, we cannot use the intuitive content of an experience, like the universe feels conscious or my mind feels separate from my body, as evidence for that content's truth, especially when neuroscience provides a plausible physicalist mechanism for the brain, the very brain state that significantly contributes to that specific intuitive experience. Brain states that significantly contribute. Okay. That's all I'll say about that. I went off the rails. All right, let's get back. I'm intrigued by this guy, even though he just said that one thing.
Metric, there's only one version of this. Tells you that people are very much into the kind of perception side and not so much into the action side. And I mean, some obviously are people who work on active inference and things like that. Of course, pay attention to both sides of the equation. But I think that is really the mark of the agent. Is sure, what does it feel like? But even more importantly, what do I do next? That's really what drives all of this. Is that I need to know what to do next. What's my next move as an agent? And that I think is really fundamental to being, and I think it's going to be fundamental to the consciousness problem too. It's going to be, it's much of it is all of the decisions about where is the boundary between you and the outside world, and all these kinds of things that are fundamental to defining yourself and what are you, and all of those are driven by the need to act, to choose a next action. And so that's kind of where I look at.
Are you able to give a precise definition of what you say consciousness is at this point?
I think that we need to be clear, and I think Dennett talks about this in one of his papers, this idea of a bait and switch. You say you're going to talk about consciousness, but what you really end up doing is telling a story about physiology and behavior, right? And so I really think we need to keep clear. There's all the science that we can do in third person, and the mark of science that you do in third person is that you don't change much, if at all, doing the experiment. So you do a certain experiment, and maybe you learn something, which does change you a little bit, but you're still the same. You're standing away from the experiment at some distance, so to speak. You're still whoever you are. You've done the experiment and you've learned something. If you're going to work on consciousness, there's no way to do I don't believe there's any good way to do third person research on consciousness. It's very hard. Most people who do that are really studying physiology and behavior. If you're going to do actual experiments on consciousness, you're part of the experiment. You are going to be changed by that experiment. So, for example, if you want to know what it's like to be something, the only actual way that you're going to get that level of information is to, in some important way, merge with that agent. So maybe we connect brains in some way, right? Now, if you and I connect our brains, I don't find out what it's like to be you, and you don't find out what it's like to be me. Instead, we find out what it's like to be us. So it's not quite the same, but nevertheless, that's as close as you're going to get. And otherwise, I can. I think I described this at the end of my Tame paper, where you can sort of imagine like doing pure third-person neuroscience, where you get some electrodes stuck in somebody's brain, and you're sort of reading on a screen, and then you decide that this screen and all this stuff, it's a low bandwidth. I really need to get in there, and so you have some kind of a brain interface on your own that's delivering the data right into your brain, and then eventually you say, yeah, that's not good enough either. I'm just going to fuse my brain directly to this other brain, and you can do that by engineering.
What is going on right now? I didn't know people were thinking about this, fusing brains together. I don't think that's how consciousness works. I think we know enough about how consciousness works that it would be very difficult to fuse your brain with someone and then have like the problem is when you fuse your brain, it's not like you're going to immediately have like this like enlightened view. What is Bros saying? Like one of the main points about homeostasis here, I guess we're just going to read more of this. So the way I kind of start off with, let's deal with the gap. In order to take the hard problem gap seriously, we can ask what is the leading candidate for the physical explanation of consciousness? Perhaps what we are seeking is where in the brain consciousness experience arises and how those neural processes give rise to the subjective sense of being conscious that we each intuitively know. So then, yeah, I point out that what we're looking for is, even though Damasio talks about the body, and obviously the body is in like real close coordination with the brain, it seems like what we're looking for is in the brain. Like that's where the mappings actually are. That's like following Damasio's own framework. While the body is indispensable, providing many of the reference signals that significantly contribute to our conscious experience, the feeling of the body arises only once those signals are mapped in neural form. So then, according to Damasio, consciousness arises as these feelings are themselves mapped when the organism forms meta representations of its own body state mappings, giving rise to subjective experience. So then we should say something like, this suggests that we should look to the brain. Do you believe the neutral monism of Bertrand Russell is a reasonable theory of mind? I don't know where these questions are coming from. Is this related to... I know this is related to consciousness, obviously, but is this related to what we're talking about right now? Or Energy Domter, can you please explain, I guess, like what that theory is? I'm not quite sure where we're getting these questions. Like, do you have a LLM making these questions for you? Like, these are very different questions, and it's hard to believe that like you're just like exploring philosophy in such a like a sporadic direction, popping from one thing to the other. It's not related to Damasio, to my understanding, but Russell, to my understanding, argued that consciousness and the body are made of the same primordial substance, which is neither physical nor spiritual. No, I don't have an LLM. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to pass on the Russell one if he's talking about a primordial substance that is neither physical nor spiritual. Like at this point, we cannot entertain non-physicalist paths here. Like that's the whole point of what I just read, like maybe 5-10 minutes ago. But I guess I didn't get to the point. To be clear, so we talk about the fact that we can't use the intuitive content of an experience, like the universe feels conscious or my mind feels separate from my body, as evidence for that content's truth, especially when neuroscience provides a plausible physicalist mechanism for the very brain states that significantly contribute to that specific intuitive experience. To be clear, these are pragmatic, prescriptive arguments, not moral but normative, pointing to the very standards of science, logic, and semantics to which this channel commits, to which we are committed. This is why I use the wording, we can or can't say this, or we should or shouldn't say this, rather than this is true and right, or this is false and wrong. We can say that a non-physicalist view, like panpsychism, is possible. We're allowed to say that, given that no neural correlation evidence definitively disproves it. Yet, we shouldn't say that it is plausible, because all the subjective evidence used to support it, like spiritual experiences or metaphysical intuitions, is better and more simply explained by the neural correlates that we've already found. We can say that a physicalist view is the most plausible framework we have, but we cannot say that it is certain. The hard problem gap is not completely closed. We are still met with an unsatisfying mystery. So that's our pragmatic argument for Russell wasn't a panpsychist. You said this is Bertrand. Yeah, we do. Funny enough, we do have Bertrand Russell as a reference in the document, in the actual document, for his discussion of the laws of physics. He believed the mind and body are connected, but didn't believe mental statements have the same properties as physical states. Right. So I mean, he's kind of going in a similar direction that I do. But instead of primordial substance, I use the conceptualization of concepts. So we have subjective experiences of concepts. And he might say we have a subjective experience of primordial substance. And yeah, I mean, unless it's really got some, like, I guess my challenge to you is unless you could tell me exactly what you think that theory will provide us, in such a way that shows that I know that you're paying attention to what I've been saying, then yeah, I don't think it's worth jumping into right now, unfortunately. All right, so back to what I was talking about. We leveraged this first discussion to talk that we're looking towards the brain, and then we say, so how can we validate this? We can look to brain lesion studies, which give us perhaps the most intuitive sense of which brain regions actually affect consciousness in significant ways. Damage to these higher order mapping networks to the higher order mapping networks we just discussed, appears to diminish or even abolish subjective feeling. Patients can often still perceive and think, yet they report an absence of emotional tone and self-presence, what Damasio would describe as the feelings of what happens. When we lose these networks, we lose key aspects of our subjective experience and our sense of self. So we've seen clinically children who are born without, children who are born with a brainstem but almost no cerebral cortex show signs of basic pleasure and distress. This strongly implies that the brainstem alone can support a rudimentary form of conscious feeling. We can think of this condition as an inverse philosophical zombie. They can feel, but they don't know that they feel. They are awake but not aware. There is no reflection or narrative self. So as far as we are concerned, you know, what we think about as consciousness intuitively, like that's pretty much gone for these children. Even though they can feel, like they're conscious enough to feel emotions, right? In contrast, damage to the neural circuits that sustain arousal and perception abolishes consciousness altogether, putting us into coma or vegetative states. Thus, in each of these cases, what we intuit as consciousness is gone. What we intuit as self-consciousness is gone, I should say. Children born without what? What happens to them? I don't know. That's actually a good question. Let's just figure that. Yeah. What's the word for this condition? I think I got rid of it from the script because I didn't know how to pronounce this, and I didn't think it was necessary.
Anencephaly.
Anencephaly is a severe congenital disorder in which a major portion of the brain, skull, and scalp fails to develop. Okay, so what happens to these children? That's a good and difficult question, and one that has clear medical answers. If the child has anencephaly, the condition is not compatible with sustained life. Right. Okay. So funny enough. So this isn't funny, but funny enough, this was the point of why I started talking about this. That's literally the next thing. Crucially, these parts of the brain don't function merely to give us a conscious display. They are crucial catalysts for many downstream mechanisms. Damasio found that damage to key homeostatic structures also disrupts temperature regulation, blood pressure, and hormonal balance. We lose not just awareness, but also motivational coherence. This should also be like, and in many cases, what was the wording it used? Sustain life? Okay. The ability to survive. Yeah, the point is that consciousness functions as a homeostatic mechanism. So unfortunately for these children, they kind of just croak. You know, that's terrible. But oh my gosh, hours to days. Oh, here we go. Okay, never mind. This is what Damasio was studying. Oh my gosh, thank goodness. So what's the difference though? In this condition, the skull is intact and the cerebral hemispheres are replaced by. I didn't know that this was a thing. Cerebrospinal fluid, but the brainstem and sometimes parts of the thalamus are present. They appear normal at birth, later show severe developmental delay, seizures, and inability to interact meaningfully with the environment. Wow. Some survive months or even years, but remain in a vegetative state. They can breathe, sleep, and wake, but lack consciousness. Well, it depends what we mean by consciousness here. So, but that's also pretty sad. So, funny enough. Oh man. Does that make sense? Oh, I believe that Russell's neutral monism provides a reasonable solution to the hard problem while avoiding metaphysical commitments, both reductive, physicalist, and panpsychist. All right. Let's do that then. Here we go. We get our. Do I not have it here? Oh. How similar or commensurate is this account with Russell's neutral monism? I'm curious. You might want to put a trigger warning for people in that section. Which section? This one, where we talk about the children. We don't explain. Maybe it's a little in bad taste to call him an inverse philosophical zombie. We don't explain how that they die in the script. That we only just read. It's implied in the script, but yeah, we don't make it that sad in the script here. Except for here, if I write this, the ability to survive. As soon as you alter the brain enough to eliminate consciousness, you also alter its physical structure and dynamics, and therefore its behavior. So we cannot remove these and still behave as some sort of philosophical zombie. This is like we're trying to point out that the very thought experiment of a philosophical zombie is, what's the word? Unintelligible. Like it doesn't make sense. Like you can't have the same brain and without the consciousness. And once you get rid of the consciousness, you have a different brain, and it's gonna affect different behavior. So you can't have the person without consciousness that behaves like a normal person, and has all the same. I mean, obviously, you could just get a language model, but I don't think that's what they mean when people say philosophical zombie. We can complement these findings with lesions that don't eliminate consciousness but affect it in significant ways. Some make a person ignore half of the visual world. Disconnections between visual and emotional circuits can make a familiar face feel like an imposter. In some cases, patients find that one hand acts on its own accord. In another rather peculiar case, patients remained fully awake yet sincerely believed that they were dead. And of course, we know that damage to large regions of the body, even the loss of sensation via spinal cord injury, modifies but does not extinguish consciousness. These scenarios remind us that consciousness can fracture in highly specific ways, yet awareness can persist while its contents, coherence, or ownership dissolve. Thus, we can start to get a sense of which parts of the brain are indispensable for consciousness, but we still have not discovered where consciousness truly resides, nor what mechanism actually makes it happen. It's certainly possible that these critical regions merely activate other regions that actually produce consciousness. So this brings us to the global workspace theory, which points out that you kind of need to have the whole system in a sense, but there's specific parts of the brain that are acting as this global workspace, and then you could take out different parts of the brain, as we saw with lesions. Like you could take out the language center, and now you're like unable to put what you're seeing into words, but that doesn't take out everything. But if you were to take out the mechanisms that actually pertain to the global workspace, then you lose consciousness, and yeah. So it's kind of this system where a bunch of different people are contributing to the conscious experience. And yeah, so then we talk about the implications of that, but we don't have to go through that. All right, here we go. This is an excellent question. Your account is not only highly commensurate with Russell's neutral monism, but it can be seen as the pragmatic neuroscientific complement to the metaphysical framework Russell proposed. They seem different on the surface. Your script champions a physicalist methodology while Russell's is neutral, but they are deeply aligned in their approach to the mind-body problem. So here's a breakdown of the comparison. What is Russell's neutral monism? To see the comparison, it's helpful to quickly define Russell's view. One, stuff. Neutral monism argues that the fundamental stuff of the universe is neither mental, as idealists say. We would say that, like, it is a mental experience of something that feels not mental, even though it's still, like, mental. Nor physical, as traditional materialists say. It is a single neutral substance. So two perspectives. This neutral stuff can be understood from two different perspectives. The extrinsic physical view, this is how we observe the stuff from the outside. Through its causal relationships and structure, this is the entire domain of physics and neuroscience. When we look at a brain and measure global neuronal workspace, activity or action potentials, we are describing the extrinsic causal behavior of the neutral stuff. Right, so this, like, weirdly enough, then what becomes of consciousness is a pattern of activity, which is simply matter moving. But the one of the key takeaways that we get out of this theory is that if we were to look at the atom of conscious experience, how does this neural activation result in our intuitive subjective experience? Let's take a moment to look at what this activity actually is at a slightly lower level. What is actually the atom of conscious experience? And then I don't know if this has been workshopped yet. Yeah, we haven't really gone too deep into this. Neural activity is the firing of many interconnected. Neural activity is the firing of many interconnected neurons, which are just specialized cells. Even though these cells are made up of molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, activation happens at a holistic level. Right? So it can't be like just some of them. It can't be the molecules that make up a neuron that are conscious. So, like, we can't take a panpsychist view like that. We can't take the panpsychist view that it's... So we can't say that all matter is conscious, nor can we say that the material structure of a neuron is conscious. We have to look at that structure and the activation, which fundamentally alters the structure. However, this is rather unintuitive. What's so special about activation at the level of a neuron? From a single neuron's perspective, its consciousness would be a sequence of periodic pulses occurring every few milliseconds. Given our discussion so far, we must consider activity across the entire distributed network, specifically orchestrated by the GNW, since the absence of this full story does not result in consciousness, or at least consciousness as we intuit it. We can only speculate if and what conscious experience arises at a more granular level. Of course, without the cortical systems from which our consciousness gains its articulated form and its feelings of certainty. This is not right. This consciousness could not be exactly like our own in its nature. We tend to anthropomorphize conscious experience, although our science tells us how different this experience would actually be. Our science strongly suggests how different this experience would actually be. This is why these neuroscientific frameworks are so practical. When considering what type of conscious experience certain species experience, we can look to see what type of neural system they contain and how similar it is to our own. This is how Damasio arrives at the speculation that animals feel without necessarily understanding what they feel, similar to the inverse zombie case mentioned earlier. Of course, this feeling would be significantly different than ours, and we can only try and fall short of intuiting what that would be like. As an aside, for the sake of animal suffering, I would argue that it's best to err on the side of caution, even though it would be a relief to know that all those chickens aren't actually suffering. We ought to assume that they are because the risk is too high. I don't know if we should say it, keep this in here, but I think it's funny. Okay. Yeah, so this needs to be workshopped still, but similar to how we can't simply look at a neuron's activation in a single instance, we must recognize that consciousness takes its intuitive, humanly conscious shape over time as our mind traverses meaning. Real consciousness seems temporally extended, an evolving trajectory of neural activity, not a static causal map. The phenomenal now lasts roughly a few hundred milliseconds. Perception and thought unfold through sequences of metastable states. So we got to make this a little more accessible. A neural trajectory is the time evolving path the system takes through the high dimension. Okay, yep. The point of the neural trajectory discussion is that we can't think about consciousness like a movie. It's not a sequence of low-dimensional frames. This is where we could point... Yeah, so this is what we got to yesterday. This is where we could point out that the brain is fundamentally analog rather than digital. Thus, consciousness is a continuous, high-dimensional stream of activity. A continuous movement of visual information, attention shifts, and recognition. Philosophy and religions have long understood that we fundamentally experience the world through narratives, and it's through this very movement that we make sense of the world, ourselves, and consciousness itself. Of course, we can conceptualize this as a sequence of words rather than a stream of continuous movement, yet it's this constant change where different underlying systems contribute their own distinctive aspect of experience. Linguistic, affective, contextual, that culminates in what we intuit to be our conscious experience. Should we get to the fun ontological takeaways? Now let's consider the ontological takeaways of this. When it comes to neural correlates, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Regardless of whether the substrate of consciousness comes from neural activity or some accounted for player, as long as it does not discount the physical mechanisms of the brain, which are functionally deterministic, it does not affect the contents of our conscious experience. So this is a crazy argument to make, by the way. And I don't know if this is the right way to say this. We probably don't even need this sentence, honestly. In other words, just because neural correlates are correlates, because we don't fully understand the underlying physical mechanisms, we do understand how the physical mechanisms cause aspects of subjective experience. That is at the functional level of analysis. It's akin to pointing out that when we stimulate the fear networks in the brain, our action causes the experience of fear. I don't know why I said pain, rather than merely correlates with it. Thus, the scientific implication of the global workspace theory is that even our experience of meaning is a result of this integrated yet distributed system. Different systems are functionally responsible for supplying different aspects of the experience, which we each intuitively recognize. We can say that the meaning we experience, explicit or acted out, is caused by the coordination of our memory, salience, affective, and autonomic systems. Introspection itself, then, is a process within the workspace. Why did I get rid of this? Conceptual systems, broadcast interpretations. I don't remember. The result is fundamentally subjective, even though, as we mentioned, our experience of the world feels certain. This reveals that what we explore in phenomenology is already a translated interpretive construct, a product of the very mechanisms it tries to describe. The philosopher Martin Heidegger captured this intuition by describing his own work as a hermeneutic phenomenology, explicitly expressing the idea that phenomenology is not a neutral observation of phenomena, but an interpretive, self-reflective inquiry into the meaning of being, where interpretation, hermeneutics, and appearance, phenomenology, are inseparable. We always already stand within interpretation. There is no view from nowhere. Many other philosophers picked up on this stance, a stance that I would describe as profoundly humble. I don't know if we're going to talk about this, include that, but we can say that consciousness is the source of each individual's unique ontology, the source of all meaning for them. However, we cannot say that anyone's unique experience directly pertains to some external absolute truth. We may share a similar brain, but each person's nature and nurture differs enough such that these experiences are meaningfully different. Similarly, our interpretation of consciousness today radically differs from humans from 5,000 years ago. The conceptualization of a hard problem of consciousness was afforded by at least a rudimentary understanding of science. Any conceptualization we have, even about consciousness, is fundamentally speculative and contingent. In the same way that we don't experience the physical world itself, we similarly don't experience consciousness itself. Functionally speaking, we experience representations produced by systems participating in consciousness. Just as perception gives us an interpretive model of the physical world, introspection gives us an interpretive model of consciousness. Thus, any metaphysical framework that attempts to make sense of consciousness by starting with self-evident features of experience, whether that is integrated information theory or analytic idealism. I don't know if we should pop off that hard and go straight at Kastrup, but I think it's worth being said, is ultimately speculative according to scientific standards. Once again, these are merely rules that we follow. We ought not start with self-evident features of experience, given that these features aren't the experience itself. I want to work on that phrasing. We could argue that any framework, including homeostasis and the global workspace theory, is ultimately speculative, given that we are merely conceptualizing what appears to us in consciousness. The pragmatic nuance here is that these frameworks are conceptualizations, are constituted by their adequate evidence and predictive utility. We could say that these frameworks follow the rules. Yeah, I want to put the emphasis on that. And then we got this lovely title, Figuring This Shit Out. Filling the hard problem gap with science is so unintuitive, but that's the point. Science explains exactly why it's difficult to intuit filling the gap of consciousness. This is why scientists claim that the hard problem gap is dissolved. It's not that the gap is gone. Certainly, we want everything to click. This brings us back to our two pragmatic paths. For dissolving the gap, the idea is that we can break the hard problem into many tractable, easy problems. We can track how specific contents become conscious, determine which aspects of consciousness are necessary for feel versus report, continue with lesion and perturbation studies, etc. Anil Seth's, so I got to introduce him. Anil Seth's hope is that by fully solving the real problem, by explaining all the phenomenological properties of experience, like why does the experience of red feel different from the experience of jealousy or the taste of cheese, the hard problem will dissolve and no longer seem like a mystery, much like the hard problem of life. Vitalism dissolved once we understood molecular biology. The reason I believe you should entertain neutral monism as a philosophy of mind is because I'm guessing you said unlike physicalism and panpsychism, it avoids interpreting consciousness as substance and instead integrates features associated with both consciousness and matter as unified. Thus avoiding speculative metaphysics and supporting modern neuroscience, which links subjective experience with neural networks. Right. Yeah, I don't know if you were here when we started this thing, but this thing says that neutral monism is actually quite commensurate with what I've just been saying this whole time. And it can also be seen as this script can be seen as the pragmatic neuroscientific complement to the metaphysical framework. But once again, Russell was, years ago, so we kind of have a more nuanced view of ideas that Russell is probably giving. We don't want to talk about consciousness as substance. That's very ambiguous. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense without the discussion we just had here. Like, we could now define what appears to us as substance, but we're just making an abstraction for what is actually more precisely explained in this video. For filling the gap, we need to figure out how to better conceptualize the atom of this holistic distributed neural structure and activity. Proponents of dissolving the gap essentially argue that we can effectively fill the gap by comparing the properties of various experiences to see which abstractions are most relevant for what we consider to be consciousness. Maybe a nice analog for this view is considering that brain activity is a language, and its meaning is something we can only interpret, but we can still figure out the nuanced intricacies of this highly complex language. I don't know if we're going to want to do that, but the point is, in each case, we're looking for a conceptual solution. We are looking for ways to make sense of the gap, build the right abstractions so the identity or realization claim stops feeling mysterious. And crucially, because our anecdotal experience and understanding, even if shared, are fundamentally speculative, we cannot rely on merely intuitive, semantic, philosophical presuppositions about consciousness, even if they feel logical. Our conceptualizations must abide. So this is saying the same thing again. So I gotta make sure that we maybe chill with that. I could say in each case, and I can move this up to here, and we're gonna have to maybe keep or remove. We'd have to remove one of these things. This is already kind of redundant. Actually, no, this is where I call that out. This would be redundant, though. We do have to get rid of that. I believe it is misleading to describe this document as physicalist, since it acknowledges that consciousness is an interpretive structure. No, it's not saying that consciousness is an interpretive structure. It's that any description of consciousness is an interpretive description, right? So this is the same idea where we have a conceptual understanding of the physical world. It's not the physical world itself. Like that's a property of the concept that we have, that our thoughts are not the physical world itself. Similarly, our thoughts about consciousness is not consciousness itself. It's like we only have this interpretive theoretical view when we're talking about, like, this is a weird thing to try to make clear, but we have this experience of some conceptual reality. The conceptual reality is made possible to us through consciousness and through the different parts of our brain that deal with emotion and linguistics and context and memory, etc. All that contributes to this experience we're having. But it's by the very nature of these concepts, and once again, when I'm talking about concepts, this is an interpretive layer that we're putting on here, where we could describe these things as substance, we could describe these things as objects in our mind, but we leverage concepts because then we get to take all the benefits of Hegelian conceptual idealism, and we get to start considering what the contents of our experience actually are. And what we're doing is just conceptualizing. It's not like the contents of our experience are concepts. This is one way we can talk about them. And there's no one way to talk about, the argument that I have against monism or neutral monism is just, it's really an argument that we can come up with a more clear, helpful conceptualization. Not that this conceptualization is like wrong in some sense, or I'm assuming that this conceptualization is literally our own, or not literally, but like highly commensurate. So I give it 2 thumbs up, but I just give it maybe a thumb up with a thumb slightly curved, because we might, I think we're able to make a more effective conceptualization, a more effective framing. I agree with that, but I'm saying that's not physicalism, at least according to any definition of physicalism I've heard before. That's a good question. What is the definition of physicalism? That the real world consists simply of the physical world. It depends what we mean by the real world. Physicalism is the philosophical view that everything is physical or depends on the physical. This means that all phenomena, including abstract concepts like numbers and mental states, can be explained by or reduced to physical phenomena. Yeah, that's literally what we've done. Like the fact that different aspects of my experience, which I'm conceptualizing as conceptual, are actually caused by different parts of the brain is exactly this physicalist reduction. Like I'm pointing out that we can make sense of the unique aspects of our conscious experience, like the feeling of certainty that we have is the reason why I strike this out is because the part of our brain that contributes the experience of certainty when we think about, when I think about this is a pen, is different than the parts of our brain that give me the words, the articulated form, the articulated sequence of words that go into my mind as this is the pen. Like it's 2 things happening at one time, and there's a lot more than just 2 things, but this is 2 things happening at one time that contribute to this experience that I feel like it's true that this is a pen. Therefore, I think that like the words are some objective external thing, when really it's an experience that is affected by the physical mechanisms happening underneath the hood. Like that. Perhaps I've literally just been convincing myself of this, but like this seems to be what the science is telling us. Like this seems to be like the only way we're allowed to talk about this stuff. Strongly suggests to us okay. Where did we get to? Oh, therefore many theorists advocate towards a dialectical synthesis of these grounded frameworks. So using homeostasis, global workspace theory, predictive processing, all points out different functional aspects of consciousness. Every major framework now treats consciousness as a mode of self-predictive integration. None of these need a further explanatory bridge The structure of the system already entails the structure of its experience. I don't know what that means. We got to figure out that one. This view isn't some fringe metaphysics. It's where the empirical research naturally leads if you take its implications seriously. Philosophers like Chalmers can continue to insist on the logical possibility of the gap, but neuroscience increasingly undermines its explanatory usefulness. If every measurable aspect of consciousness, access, report, vividness, affect, intentionality, maps onto and arises from inferential integration, there's no remainder left that does explanatory work. The hard problem survives only as a conceptual hangover, not as a, so this actually this contradicts the pragmatic direction we pointed out earlier. Pragmatic conceptualization direction that we pointed out earlier. So we might have to gut that. Okay, and then I get into this. It's okay to not know more than we currently do. Just to be clear, the physicalist view is predicated on the assumption that its own perspective is insufficient and lacking. If someone wanted to prove that the physicalist perspective is wrong, they would need to follow the same paths that the physicalists are currently pursuing, unless, of course, they've given up on scientific method. On the scientific method. On scientific methodology. Scientific rigor and methodology. On I don't know, one of those. The claim that neuroscience will never solve the problem is an untestable, unfalsifiable statement of metaphysical pessimism. Science operates on the explicit bet against such never claims. And so I think this is the opportunity to point out that we the Hank Green quotes from that Aliens video, and I think that would be fun to do, just to hammer that point home. Science is actually moving incredibly quick in this field. Many people are focused on answering these very questions, and we will end this video off by exploring a few interesting developments. Real quickly, though, before we get into the neat pursuits of contemporary neuroscience, I want to make one last pragmatic argument, especially since it relates to this channel. As it relates to this channel. While it's nice to see closure on that question, I don't think it's immediately necessary for a practical exploration of. So I don't know if we need to go into freedom here. Maybe we do. Yeah, this is like kind of our advertisement, but maybe we can make this a slight. Maybe make this transition a little less stark. Sorry, I've not read what's going on here. All right. The reason I believe it is wrong to conceptualize your position as physicalist is because you acknowledge our understanding of physics is conceptual. So to say that consciousness arises from physics still assumes conceptual idealism. Right? We do assume a form of conceptual idealism and physicalism. It's like we take them both. Conceptual idealism allows you to take physicalism as well. You get to operate in both. I personally believe it would be more precise to say the document is an emergentist, like Rand's theory of mind. Oh, is that what Brandom describes his own theory? Emergentist? Let's give this one. How would you describe the framework expressed in this video script? Is it can I call it physicalist? Can I even since it's seemingly also conceptual idealist. Is there another word for it? Like what is this? Emergentist? Where did you get this idea? Because I mean, Brandon, I think, describes this. Brandon described the framework that I got from the Spirit of Trust as conceptual idealism, even though it's a different conceptual idealism as Hegel's, in the random Hegel sense, not the Kant sense. Is this framework novel? So there wouldn't be an apt colloquial philosophical term for it. I gotta remember to actually paste the thing in here. I've heard emergentist described as the idea that consciousness emerges but does not have the exact same properties as physical matter. Yeah, even that though, I would say is not what we're trying to push. Like, just because we can conceptualize that the contents in our mind are concepts doesn't mean that that is actually a more apt way of describing what's happening in our mind. The whole idea is that the physical mechanisms are the conscious experience. Like, you could think of it, the information that the brain is passing around over time is the experience itself. There's no, there's no dualism in that sense. There's just the process, and so yeah, we're only able to conceptualize things. So I'm conceptualizing the stuff that I'm experiencing as conceptual, if that makes any sense. All right, I am what's the word? Curious. I'm curious to see what this thing says. Also, we are at 2 hours, so I might call it, and we can check out this guide tomorrow, where I put in the entire survey document, and I put in our script, and then I said, given all that you know about the different frameworks of consciousness, how well does my video script argue its perspective? So we'll save that for tomorrow. That'll be fun. You're right to point out the tension between those terms based on the script. Here's a breakdown of the framework you're expressing. The most accurate term for your framework is pragmatic naturalism or methodological physicalism. What? Oh man, are these terms that people use? Here's why. Naturalism/physicalism. The framework's method is strictly naturalist and physicalist. You state that the standards and rigor of empirical science are the only tools being used. You derive the high plausibility of physicalism from abductive reasoning, inference to the explanation. What happened there, LLM? What's going on, Gemini? We inference to the best explanation. I don't know what happened here. Based on all existing scientific evidence. Pragmatic/methodological. You explicitly state that you are not arguing for what is true in some absolute ontological sense. This is another thing. This is another thing that makes us different from, a lot of these different branches of philosophy that are telling you what is the case, right? What is true. And we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to say that it is true in some philosophical, in the fundamental philosophical sense. Instead, you're arguing for what is the most plausible, promising, useful, and communicable pursuit. This makes your stance a pragmatic or methodological one, not a dogmatic metaphysical one. You're betting on the horse that has the best track record, science. Physicalist versus conceptual idealist. You are not expressing a contradiction. Your framework uses methodological physicalism to explain the phenomena that conceptual idealists find important, and panpsychists. Nice. Here's the key move you make in the script. You are treating conceptual idealist style experience as a product of a physicalist process. Look at that. It pretty much just said what I just said, which is nice. In your framework, the physicalist base, the brain, a physical system, operates according to neuroscientific principles. The idealist phenomenon, this physical system generates an interpretive model of consciousness. You cite Heidegger's hermeneutic phenomenology, stating that we always already stand within interpretation. The synthesis, the crucial link is that this interpretation is not a fundamental feature of the universe, as a true idealist might argue. Instead, it is a function of the brain's physical mechanisms. Right, so we can still say that the source of our ontology is consciousness, but we can make sense of that source through physical mechanisms. Right? There's no like meaning inherent in matter, in physical matter. Like when we say that information is being passed, like that's a functional interpretation of the science. You state this directly. Phenomenology is already a translated interpretive construct, a product of the very mechanism it tries to describe. So no, you cannot call it a conceptual idealist framework. You are a methodological physicalist who is taking the problems of idealism, the nature of interpretation, meaning, and subjective experience, seriously, and then explaining them using neuroscience. Wow, okay. So I guess we can't take conceptual idealism. Fair enough. Other words for it. While pragmatic naturalism is probably the best fit, here are other terms that capture different aspects of your position. Hermeneutic naturalism. This is a more precise academic term. It's naturalism, science first, but also hermeneutic, acknowledging that all our understanding, including science itself, is an act of interpretation. Your use of Heidegger makes this a very strong candidate. A dissolving framework. You lean heavily on the idea, which you attribute to Emil Seth, but not just him, that the hard problem is a conceptual error that will dissolve once we solve the easy or real problems. This approach argues the gap is a pre-scientific illusion, much like vitalism was. Emergentism. Hey, emergentism. I didn't even give it the possibility, but here we go. Emergentism, non-reductive physicalism. You treat consciousness as an emergent property of continuous reentrant dynamics. You're not a reductive physicalist saying consciousness is just neurons. You're a non-reductive physicalist saying consciousness arises from the complex, integrated, and dynamic activity of neurons. There we go. So it seems like if there's a rank ordering, it would be the least. I guess the least apt description would be idealism, conceptual idealism, and then it would probably be emergentism, non-reductive physicalism, and then it would probably be something akin to what it said originally, which is like I don't remember, naturalism / physicalism. Pragmatic, methodological. So it called it pragmatic naturalism or methodological physicalism. Or why not pragmatic physicalism? Who knows? Is this framework novel? Nice. No, but your synthesis is sophisticated and not common. Nice. The individual components are well established. Methodological physicalism, the default stance of most working scientists. The dissolving approach, most famously championed by philosopher Daniel Dennett and neuroscientists like Emil Seth and Michael Graziano. But I think if I recall from what we were talking about yesterday, which I already forget, we don't like Daniel Dennett's way of dissolving. Like we want to go for a different approach for dissolving it. Hermeneutic critique of phenomenology, a deep cut from continental philosophy. So I was kind of hoping is the synthesis novel, but I guess probably not. That being said, I'm trying to find people that are also like following this type of synthesis, and it's hard to find, at least using LLMs. Therefore, it's hard to find in general because now I have to brute force search for people. Your framework's specific contribution is its synthesis. You are blending the hard-nosed empirical approach of GWT, Damasio, with the deep philosophical humility of the hermeneutic tradition. You're using Heidegger to explain why the gap feels so real, while using Dehaene and Damasio. I have to figure out how to actually pronounce this. Pronunciation.
Duane.
Duane? Duane?
Duane.
Dehaene.
No way.
Dehaene. Dehaene.
No.
Dehaene.
No. We have to find a video with it. That's terrible. All right. So there isn't a single colloquial term for it because it's a specific, well-researched synthesis of multiple academic fields. Pragmatic naturalism is your best and most accurate description. All right. Is that satisfactory, Energy Dompter? It's pronounced Dehaney, sir. Are you certain of that? Dehaney? Yeah, Onion Helmet, I don't know if you were here for that whole spiel. Also, if anyone else is here, I just kind of want to know also, does this make sense, the stuff I've been saying? Like, does this check out? Are these arguments salient? Because to me, they're quite salient. To the language model, they seem salient, but I don't know if it's glazing me. So I also want to know, is this like accessible enough such that it is salient for, you know, it makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, I'm wondering if we should like do a. Oh, I totally forgot to post that the one post on r/consciousness. Maybe I'll do one tomorrow. But yeah, I'm wondering if we should post the script onto r/consciousness to kind of get like a first run through before we do the video. And then make edits and then you know, do the video. That makes sense, but I believe you should be open to different findings in neuroscience, some of which to indicate panpsychism, like NDEs. NDEs, something experience. Non-dual. NDEs. Near-death experience. Nice. Well, yeah, the issue is, though, that what I've described so far, you know, the whole argument against using intuitive experience would similarly combat using intuitions about near-death experience to serve as fundamental premises for some approach. But if you're pointing out like yeah, you'd have to point out something so weird about the behavior of the brain during those experiences that would put these other neuroscientific interpretations in suspect in contention. It makes it, if it sounds good to a 5-year-old, you're good. Are you? I don't know if it sounds good to a 5-year-old. Are you saying that you're a 5-year-old here? Should I bring it to 5-year-olds and just let it rip? I am kind of curious because people do talk about like what a high schooler knows versus like what college students know. Like, what happens if you do just take material that's like this stuff and you give it to high schoolers? Like, high schoolers did listen to Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson talked at least an undergrad level. And some of the topics that Jordan Peterson talked about was graduate level. So, like, what actually gets absorbed for the high schooler? Is it just the passion and like maybe the big phrases? I'm not trying to make them sound like they're just dumb and they can only take in like what's most salient, but like how much how much actually sticks? Let's pretend like we're 5 for a minute. This is a great challenge. Okay. Okay, let's change. Let's shift topics for a second. Could you describe the framework explained in this script to a 5-year-old? I should say, how would you? Oh, no, it's actually doing it. But his name is pronounced Duan. Oh, Doan. Duan. Dewan. Oh, you got it. Nice. Thank you.
Doan to speak to us today.
And you had it perfectly time-stamped.
Presidents for inviting Dr. Doan to speak to us today.
Oh my gosh, Doan. So it's like there's a W in there. It's a Doan.
Presidents for inviting Dr. Doan to speak to us today.
Wow. Incredible. God is consciousness. We figured it out. Should I hear him talk? Oh no, this is talking about something different though. But I might want to hear him talk before we actually put up this video. I should have heard Damasio talk. I don't know what Damasio sounds like. I should probably make sure. Is this the guy? Do we have the right? No, I think that's the right guy. Right? Oh no, what happened here? Oh, it's here? This one?
Doan to speak to us.
Oh, do we have the right guy? That's a good question. I don't remember his first name. This is the right guy. Yeah. Stanislas. Oh my gosh. An absolute Chad name. Of course this is the guy. I should even say I should say his first name here. Yeah, we have to now. I originally thought maybe we shouldn't even say his name because it's not super important, but Stanislas Doan. Man, I'm pretty stoked by that. Watch like Damasio's name was Don't I know Damazio's name? Antonio, yeah. Okay. It's like I'm watch it be like some other Stan. Is there another Stan? I don't know. I'm not accepting Stanleys, but anyway, back to the 5-year-old thing. Read me a sentence and I'll say what I think RPing as a 5-year-old. Is this the guy to the Dehaney incident? Stan Duan sounds like a New Yorker saying Stan the Wan. Stan Duan. All right. Imagine your brain is a super duper highly complicated magic box. Really complicated magic box. Not, I think highly is too complex for a word. Imagine your brain is a super duper really complicated magic box. All your thoughts, all your feelings, and even the feeling of being you are like pictures and sounds that the magic box makes. Some people look at the box and say, wow, how does it make the pictures? It must be real magic. But this video says it's probably not real magic. It's just a very, very clever box that we don't understand yet. The video's big idea is the only way to figure out how the box works is to use our science tools to look inside and see how all the little tiny gears and wires work together. We can't say our brain cells to 5-year-olds. What's going on here? Here's the cool part. The magic box also builds a special pair of glasses just for you. These glasses are your understanding of the world. The box learns things from your family, your friends, and school, and it uses that to change the glasses. So the pictures the box makes, so your feelings, and the special glasses it builds, your understanding, are both made by the same box. The video says that the mystery of the box isn't a mystery we can never solve. We just have to be good science detectives. Keep looking at all the wires and figure out how the box builds its pictures and its glasses. This is a good explanation, but it lacks the nuance to actually make this salient for someone who's already anti-physicalist, which is a bummer. Like I think the real power of the argument comes out in the nuance, but obviously that's the case. This sounds like a self-help book. Something's going on here. 5-year-olds will hear this and you got games on your phone. 5-year-olds have phones, right? Isn't that the way that generations have been going? You've got like a 3-year-old on an iPad already. Actually, this is a ChatGPT question. At what age are children today getting a touchscreen device of any kind? Tablet, phone, some child version, etc. Because I know there's devices that specifically just have child content on it, like child games. According to a 2015 report from Common Sense Media, okay, by age 8, 51% of children age 0 to 8 already have their own mobile device. Okay, so this is they don't know what age it was that it was given, but by 8 it was 51. By age 4, more than, whoa, what is this? By age 4, more than a half own a tablet. 40% own a tablet by age 2? What? Okay, by age 8, 1 in 4 own their own cell phone. Oh my gosh. Regarding smartphones, according to the Pew Research Center, survey. Roughly 6 in 10 parents of children aged 11 to 12 say their child uses or interacts with a smartphone. So a little over 50% by 11. But owning their own smartphone is much less common at younger ages. Okay. So yeah, they use a smartphone, maybe the parents, but they might have I'm guessing the tablets more likely. All right, what time is it? 9:20. I think I gotta go. I gotta skedaddle. But this is kind of freaky. All right. What did we say about this guy?
And then now you're into first person science, right? And so you sort of smoothly and that's experiments with I don't know, maybe people talk about.
You just reminded me of another one because I said Kevin says all the sort of interplays with it. When I spoke to Cole,
let's just get the summarize. This is such a nice feature now. He argues that when people typically discuss, points the asymmetry in theories of mind, right? He believes the necessity to act and choose the next action is fundamental to being and will be key to understanding consciousness. Yeah, like has he not gone into Anil Seth? And Anil Seth's, like, it's literally called Being You. A New Science of Consciousness. This came out 4 years ago. This was this year. What are people doing? What's going on here? And like, not only is this, or no, I shouldn't say that, but this is specifically a view that talks about predictive processing. So the necessity to act and choose the next action is literally this framework. I don't like. Am I missing something where what this guy's talking about is somehow different than what I'm seeing has already been placed out here? Or are they just not familiar? I don't know. That true experience on consciousness would require the research to be part of the experience and be changed by it. Right. This is where he started talking about the melding of the minds. Which, this brought us into the whole discussion about, the whole point I was trying to make like an hour and a half ago is that if you meld a mind with someone else, chances are you throw off the homeostatic processes. It's not like you just meld two minds together and now you get a display of both minds. Like, these processes are they're highly specific to the evolutionary trajectory that led to where we are now. Like, they're highly specific to the selective pressures that affected that trajectory. So you can't just combine two brains and have all the systems work as you would expect. It wouldn't maintain homeostasis in the same way. Like, you would have to understand the brain much better to do something like put two brains together. And we're probably not close to that, you know? I mean, maybe if AI models start popping off, maybe we're like 20 years away. I don't know. What do we got here? S-Science AMA. Oh, nice. Nice. So this is how we learn. Oh, beautiful. Okay, this is great for part 2. We get to leverage someone who we trust in their own neuroscientific pursuits for specifically this. All right, beautiful. Thank you very much, Onion Helmet. Thank you for being an effective Jamie during the stream and during many streams. Where do I want to put this? I'm going to put this in the document, actually, just so I know that we cover it. He stresses the need for panpsychism to have an empirical component and highlights the importance of an engineering perspective to connect these philosophical ideas to testable scientific experiments. All right, so I'm chill with that. He expresses experiment about his collaborative work with Chris Fields, Carl Friston, and Mark S. because they are developing a rigorous quantitative model to define what minds are and where they come from. Nice. He differentiates their approach to panpsychism from the traditional view. Okay. Okay, so this is actually a pretty nice contemporary view. I just don't know why he's. I mean, maybe he is up to date and he's just pointing out that that's the direction he wants to go in as well. Suggesting that true experiments on consciousness would require the research to be part of the experiment and be changed by it. Kind of. You also could just. I don't understand that one. Why don't you just do report? Why don't you just have people that you know are conscious explain what they experience? I don't know. What the F is a Jamie? It was a call to the Joe Rogan podcast. Jamie's the guy that always gets the right stuff for the right conversation up on the screen. So I don't know. It's kind of a deep cut, but it's not too deep. What am I doing here? I'm going to part 2, and I'm going to find the learning. This is under pursuing goals effectively, learning, and I'm just going to kind of plop this here. Learning. Yes, right here. Boom. Right there. Beautiful. Energy Daunter, they have been, yeah. No, we definitely went down. Right, I should say, certainly some of them. Some of the other ones, I think are just too old to provide anything that other frameworks haven't already given us. But yeah, it's always worth the discussion. I'm a Hegelian in the sense I talked about this like a year ago in the same way, but even when I have to make distinctions between the framework that I'm building here and other frameworks does contribute to my understanding of my own framework, like that exercise, and the specific distinctions I make my framework more clear in my own mind. Like my understanding of what I'm even trying to say becomes more determinate as I continuously have to communicate these things, which is always just beneficial generally. Jamie, pull up the slide of the talking bear waving baskets in front of the mathematician guests. Nice. Yeah, that every once in a while that happens, and it's a little upsetting. All right, so I think we want to keep an eye on this guy. How do we do this though? This was the full episode. Do I just have to search for him? Didn't I already did this, but I guess I lost it. Daniel Levin. How do we follow him? Does he have a YouTube channel? No. Is Michael Levin legit? Skeptic. All right, we'll go into a Michael Levin arc some other day. Do we want to watch this video though? Yeah, I think we do. Let's just save that as well. Anil Seth, children, Aristotle, consciousness, home. And we're out of there. Yo, Eric, what's good? Hey, man, watched the vid responding to Alex O'Connor, and it almost brought me to tears while I was at work. Oh, my gosh. Thank you very much. Now, that is a compliment. Keep up the good work. Well, unfortunately, you just missed the stream, but we are working on the next... We're working on the next video where I actually go deep into the science that we understand about what is actually affecting this exact experience we have. So I'm putting in the due diligence on this one, making sure that it's comprehensive. So hopefully I can bring you to tears again. But yeah, no, I'm glad that I'm glad that it got the reception that it did. It's certainly motivating for me. There's a lot of stuff we are going to talk about on this channel that I think is pushing the boundaries, or like it's on the front line of these topics. So, you know, I'm just at this point just trying to make noise so that we can build this community, get more excitement around what we're trying to do here. So, thank you. All right, I am going to call it a night, though. Great stream, though. Very productive. A lot of fun. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about consciousness again. Wednesday we'll be working on the channels document, the Stan Richardson document, part 2. So that'll be different. But then we're back to consciousness on Thursday and Friday, and maybe Saturday. So, all right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for watching. And yeah, if it's not night, Dharma Dom, have a good rest of the day.